The private elevator to the penthouse suite stopped at the 50th floor. McGregor stepped out, knowing that the men waiting for him controlled more money than most countries. He also knew that if this meeting went wrong, he might never leave Vegas alive. Welcome back to Fight Night Secrets, where we expose the stories they never wanted you to hear. Tonight, we're diving into the darkest chapter of Conor McGregor's life outside the octagon. A story of greed, desperation, and a deal with the devil that could have destroyed everything he had built. This is the untold story of how McGregor's gambling addiction led him into the hands of the most dangerous men in Las Vegas. It all started in September 2023, during what should have been a celebration week in Las Vegas. McGregor had just signed a massive new contract with the UFC, worth an estimated $200 million over 5 years. He was on top of the world, surrounded by his entourage at the most exclusive casino in Vegas, the Crimson Palace. The Crimson Palace wasn't just any casino. It was a private gambling establishment that catered exclusively to billionaires, celebrities, and people whose wealth came from sources that didn't appear on any tax returns. To even get through the front door, you needed a personal invitation and a credit line of at least $50 million. McGregor had been coming to the Crimson Palace for 3 years, ever since his first massive payday. What started as casual high-stakes poker games had gradually escalated into something much more dangerous. The adrenaline rush of risking millions on a single hand of cards was almost as addictive as the roar of the crowd in the octagon. But on this particular night, McGregor's luck had completely abandoned him. He had been playing Texas Hold'em in the palace's most exclusive private room for 14 straight hours. Across from him sat Viktor Kozlov, a Russian oligarch who owned 3 oil companies and a small country. Next to Viktor was Chen Wei, a Chinese businessman whose legitimate businesses were just a front for the largest money laundering operation in Asia. The third player was Maria Santos, a Colombian woman who controlled more cocaine than the rest of the world combined. These weren't just wealthy people playing cards for fun. These were individuals who could buy and sell entire governments, and McGregor was losing to them. Badly. By 6 a.m., McGregor had lost $47 million. His UFC contract money, his endorsement deals, his investments in Proper 12 whiskey, his real estate portfolio, everything was gone. But the most terrifying part wasn't the money he had lost. It was the additional $30 million he had borrowed from the house to keep playing. The house credit at the Crimson Palace wasn't like a bank loan. There was no paperwork, no lawyers, no legal documents. When you borrowed money from the Crimson Palace, you were borrowing from people who collected debts in ways that would make the IRS look like kindergarten teachers. As the sun rose over the Vegas skyline, McGregor sat alone at the poker table, staring at the chips that represented his entire life's work. All gone. His hands were shaking, not from exhaustion, but from the realization of what he had done. The dealer, a young woman who had seen countless millionaires destroy themselves at this very table, spoke quietly. "Mr. McGregor, would you like me to call someone for you?" McGregor looked up at her with bloodshot eyes. "Yeah, call my lawyer and my priest, in that order." But before he could reach for his phone, the private elevator at the far end of the room opened with a soft ding. Out stepped 3 men in perfectly tailored suits, moving with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you're untouchable. The first man was Alessandro Romano, the owner of the Crimson Palace. Alessandro came from a family that had been in the hospitality business for 5 generations. His great-grandfather had run speakeasies during Prohibition. His grandfather had owned casinos in Cuba before Castro. His father had built the first legal casinos in Atlantic City. Alessandro had taken the family business global. The second man was Dr. Benjamin Cross, though everyone called him the accountant. Dr. Cross had a PhD in mathematics from MIT and could calculate odds in his head faster than most people could use a calculator. He was also rumored to have connections to intelligence agencies on 3 continents. The third man was the most dangerous of all, precisely because he looked the most ordinary. Michael Sullivan appeared to be nothing more than a middle-aged accountant with a receding hairline and wire-rimmed glasses. In reality, he was the man who made problems disappear for people who could afford his services. Alessandro approached the table with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "Conor, my friend, I heard you had a rough night." McGregor tried to maintain his composure, but his voice betrayed his fear. "Alessandro, I need to discuss payment arrangements." "Of course you do. That's why we're here." Alessandro gestured to his companions. "I think you know Dr. Cross, and this is Mr. Sullivan, our collections specialist." The word collections hung in the air like a threat. Everyone in that room knew what happened to people who couldn't pay their debts to the Crimson Palace. Some of them ended up in shallow graves in the Nevada desert. Others simply vanished, their disappearances explained away as voluntary early retirements to countries without extradition treaties. Dr. Cross opened a leather portfolio and began reading numbers in his precise academic voice. Principal borrowed, $30 million. Interest rate, 20% per month, compounded daily. Current balance as of this morning, $31.4 million. McGregor's head spun. 20% per month? That's insane. Alessandro's smile widened. Insane is borrowing $30 million from people you can't afford to disappoint, Conor. But don't worry. We're reasonable people. We understand that even the most successful individuals can experience temporary cash flow problems. What are you saying? I'm saying that we have a proposal for you, a way to clear your debt and walk away from this unfortunate situation. Alessandro nodded to Dr. Cross, who produced a thick manila envelope from his briefcase. Inside this envelope is a detailed proposition. If you accept our offer, your debt will be forgiven completely. You'll also receive a bonus payment of $50 million, deposited into an offshore account of your choosing. McGregor couldn't believe what he was hearing. You're willing to pay me $50 million to forget about a $30 million debt? What's the catch? Michael Sullivan spoke for the first time, his voice as emotionless as a computer. The catch, Mr. McGregor, is that you'll be working for us, not as an employee, but as a business partner. What kind of business? Alessandro leaned back in his chair. The entertainment business, Conor. You're going to continue fighting, continue being the biggest star in combat sports. The only difference is that occasionally you'll receive specific instructions about how certain fights should end. The words hit McGregor like a physical blow. They weren't just asking him to throw fights. They were asking him to become part of a massive match-fixing operation. You want me to lose fights on purpose? Not lose, Dr. Cross corrected with academic precision. Manage outcomes. Sometimes you'll win when you're supposed to lose. Sometimes you'll lose when you're supposed to win. Sometimes you'll control exactly what round a fight ends in. It's all about managing the betting markets. Alessandro continued the explanation. You see, Conor, the global sports betting market is worth over $1 trillion annually. Mixed martial arts represents approximately $60 billion of that market. When someone like you fights, the betting volume can reach $500 million for a single event. and you want to manipulate that market. We want to optimize it, Alessandro said smoothly. Think of it as insider trading, but for sports. We have information that other bettors don't have. Information about injuries, training camp problems, personal issues, family drama, but most importantly, we have influence over outcomes. Michael Sullivan opened his own briefcase and pulled out photographs. These are some of our other business partners. Boxers, football players, tennis stars, basketball players. Champions in every major sport. They all faced similar financial difficulties, and they all made the smart choice. McGregor looked at the photographs and recognized several faces. Athletes he had met at charity events, fighters he had trained with, champions he had shared stages with. People he had considered friends and colleagues were secretly working for this organization. How many fighters in the UFC? Enough, Sullivan replied cryptically. Enough to ensure that when we need a specific outcome, we can arrange it. Alessandro stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the Las Vegas Strip. Conor, I want you to understand something very important. This isn't just about your debt anymore. We've invested significant time and resources in bringing you into our organization. Whether you accept our offer willingly or unwillingly is entirely up to you. The threat was clear. McGregor felt his mouth go dry. And if I refuse? Dr. Cross answered in his matter-of-fact tone. If you refuse, your debt remains active. Interest continues to compound. After 6 months, you'll owe approximately $90 million. After 1 year, closer to $200 million. Eventually, the numbers become unmanageable. And then? Michael Sullivan's expression didn't change. Then we move from the negotiation phase to the collection phase, and nobody wants that, Mr. McGregor. Nobody. Alessandro returned to the table and placed the manila envelope directly in front of McGregor. Inside this envelope, you'll find a detailed contract. Terms of employment, payment schedules, performance expectations. You'll also find a list of your first 3 assignments. All you have to do is sign, and this entire unpleasant situation disappears. McGregor stared at the envelope as if it were a poisonous snake. His entire career, everything he had built, his reputation as an honest competitor. It would all be a lie if he signed that contract. I need time to think about this. Of course, Alessandro said graciously. Take all the time you need. You have until 6 p.m. tonight to make your decision. After that, the offer expires, and we move to more traditional collection methods. The 3 men prepared to leave, but Alessandro turned back at the elevator. Oh, and Conor? Don't even think about running. We have people in Dublin, London, New York, Los Angeles, everywhere you might go. And don't think about going to the police or the FBI. This conversation never happened, and you have no proof we were ever here. As the elevator doors closed, McGregor was left alone with the manila envelope and the weight of an impossible decision. Sign the contract and become a criminal, or refuse and face consequences that could destroy not just his career, but his life. For the first time since he was a teenager growing up in Dublin, Conor McGregor felt completely powerless. He opened the envelope with trembling hands. The contract was 30 pages of legal language, but the basic terms were simple. He would fight according to predetermined scripts. He would receive $50 million immediately, plus additional payments for each performance. He would never speak publicly about the arrangement, and he would be bound to the organization for the rest of his fighting career. The first 3 assignments were attached to the contract. Fight 1. lose by decision in round 4 to his next opponent, Tommy Rodriguez. Fight 2. Win by knockout in round 2 against whoever the UFC booked next. Fight 3. Lose by submission in round 3 to a fighter who would be specifically chosen for him. As McGregor read the details, he realized this wasn't just about individual fights. This was about controlling the entire sport of mixed martial arts. Every major fight, every championship, every breakout star, it was all being orchestrated by this organization. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. 6 p.m. tonight. Penthouse suite. Don't disappoint us. A.R. McGregor spent the day walking the streets of Las Vegas, trying to figure out a way out of this nightmare. He couldn't call his manager. Phone calls could be monitored. He couldn't call his lawyer. Lawyer-client privilege wouldn't protect him if he was already dead. He couldn't even call his family. That would just put them in danger too. As evening approached, McGregor made a decision that would define the rest of his life. Instead of going to the penthouse suite, he walked into the Las Vegas FBI field office. Special Agent Sarah Martinez had been investigating organized crime in Las Vegas for 8 years. She had heard stories about the Crimson Palace, but had never been able to get anyone on the inside to talk. When Conor McGregor walked through her door with a manila envelope full of evidence, she knew this was the break she had been waiting for. Mr. McGregor, what you're describing is one of the largest sports manipulation schemes we've ever encountered. But if you're willing to work with us, we can bring down this entire organization. What would I have to do? Wear a wire. Get them to repeat their offers on tape. Give us enough evidence to secure warrants and make arrests. McGregor thought about the risks. If Alessandro and his people discovered he was working with the FBI, he would be killed. But if he didn't take this chance, he would spend the rest of his life as a criminal, knowing that every fight was fake. I'll do it. At 6 p.m., McGregor returned to the Crimson Palace. This time, he was wearing a wire so small that even he forgot it was there. Alessandro, Dr. Cross, and Michael Sullivan were waiting for him in the penthouse suite, along with several new faces. Conor, I was hoping you'd make the right decision. Have you reviewed our proposal? I have, and I have some questions. For the next hour, McGregor got them to explain their entire operation in detail. How they fixed fights across multiple sports. How they laundered money through fake charities. How they eliminated people who tried to expose them. How they had corrupted officials, referees, and athletic commissioners across the world. Alessandro was so confident that he had McGregor trapped that he revealed everything. Names, dates, bank account numbers, even the location of bodies buried in the desert. So you see, Conor, you're joining something much bigger than yourself. We're not just fixing fights. We're reshaping the entire sports entertainment industry. McGregor nodded and reached for the pen to sign the contract. But instead of signing, he stood up and smiled. Alessandro, there's something I need to tell you. This entire conversation has been recorded by the FBI. You're all under arrest. The penthouse suite erupted in chaos as FBI agents burst through the doors. Alessandro tried to reach for a gun, but Agent Martinez was faster. Dr. Cross attempted to destroy evidence, but the agents had been listening to everything through McGregor's wire. Michael Sullivan, the man who made problems disappear, simply sat in his chair and waited to be handcuffed. He knew when he was beaten. As the arrests were being made, Alessandro looked at McGregor with pure hatred. You have no idea what you've done. We have people everywhere. This isn't over. McGregor looked back at him without flinching. Yeah, it is. The arrests at the Crimson Palace led to the largest sports corruption investigation in FB1 history. Over the next 6 months, 47 people were arrested across 12 countries. The investigation revealed match fixing in professional boxing, tennis, basketball, football, and mixed martial arts. Several high-profile athletes were exposed as participants in the scheme. Championships were stripped, records were vacated, and entire sporting events were revealed to have been scripted entertainment rather than legitimate competition. McGregor's cooperation with the FBI earned him complete immunity from prosecution. His gambling debts were forgiven as part of a plea agreement with prosecutors. But more importantly, he had saved the integrity of his sport. At a press conference following the arrests, McGregor addressed the sports world. "I want everyone to know that I never threw a fight, never took money to lose, and never compromised my integrity as a competitor. When I was faced with the choice between easy money and doing what's right, I chose to do what's right. The men who tried to corrupt me thought they could buy my soul. They were wrong. Some things aren't for sale." The scandal sent shockwaves through the sports world, but it also had an unexpected positive effect. Betting regulations were strengthened. Athlete support programs were created to help competitors avoid gambling addiction, and new oversight committees were established to monitor the integrity of major sporting events. McGregor returned to fighting 6 months later, but he was a changed man. He had looked evil in the face and walked away. He had faced the ultimate test of character and passed. In his first fight after the scandal, McGregor dedicated his victory to everyone who believes that sport should be about more than money. It should be about honor, integrity, and the pursuit of greatness. Alessandro Romano was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Dr. Cross received 40 years. Michael Sullivan, in exchange for testifying against other members of the organization, received 25 years. The Crimson Palace was closed permanently, and its assets were seized by the federal government. The building was eventually converted into a community center for at-risk youth. And Conor McGregor? He learned that sometimes the biggest victories happen outside the octagon. Sometimes being a champion means having the courage to do the right thing, even when it's the hardest thing. Because that's what separates true champions from everyone else. Not their ability to win fights, but their refusal to compromise their souls.